So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. What's my talk about today? Well, it's a little bit about a bridge between the seemingly disparate worlds of UX, analytics, and A/B testing. For me, they're not distant cousins. They all go together in a nice dance. They met, they fell in love, and they lived happily ever after, at least in my mind. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but mainly a lot about the humongous amount of really bloody stupid testing people are doing on their websites, wasting endless thousands of hours on this stuff. So what's a good way of illustrating this? Well, the Gartner hype cycle, classic example. So what kind of happens with A/B testing if it's put into this kind of hype cycle? Well, the first thing happens is that someone goes, yeah, we need an A/B testing tool, right? And it gets installed, right? Okay, this is where the problem gets worse, because then people start to do stupid testing. Let's test the homepage, let's try that. Random testing. And then they say, really love all this stupid testing. It's like, burning rubber donuts in the car park of user experience. Lots of light, lots of smoke, lots of sound, but nobody's going anywhere. And this is the problem with this stuff. Then say, let's do more of this stupid stuff. Let's hire more people, get a bigger team. So the whole thing scales up. So you just got massively scaled stupidity. And at some point, you will reach, in a company's evolution, the peak stupid moment, okay? You can get stuck there. I know some people are still waiting there for something to happen. But often what happens is people begin to question things. So they'll say, we're not seeing the ROI in this. You promised all these lifts, 500%, 200%. Where the hell are they? I don't see them in my pocket. So what's happened to them? Well, the statistics get debunked. Somebody actually works out that the company's not testing properly. There's a faith crisis. This A/B testing stuff is all bullshit. We're wasting our time. And then you're in the trough of testing, where there's only one way of crawling out of this hole or getting past this part of the testing cycle, and that's to figure out where you're going to test, how. And the most important reason is not to test because you think you should change something. There's got to be a why. Because we saw users struggling with the fact that they couldn't understand our delivery charges, we think that by showing these, more people will buy stuff. That's a why. Changing an orange button to a green button just to see is not a why in A/B testing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a little bit of data science. Statistics, samples, understanding purchase cycles, these are important. The most important thing is A/B testing is not about lifts or money or anything else like that or conversion rate. It's about learning useful shit that you can take and use in the rest of your product. Understanding things from running tests that's a valuable piece of information to your business. That's true A/B testing. Once you master those kind of things, you can get into the whole thing of testing to innovate. And I'll talk about that later on. But whilst you're in this part of the diagram, you're burning huge amounts of cash. All this stuff you're spending on testing is not actually doing anything because it's not teaching you anything useful. And this is what happens, right? This is what it feels like when you're applying the dog in the wrong place. Lots of friction, but not much action. But A/B testing is a bit like this. We shouldn't be surprised that these things have gone wrong because YouTube was never ever going to be 100% quality content, was it? So you've got 108 million funny cat videos. You've got 45 million videos of people videoing themselves playing video games. What is that all about? And this has gone up a few million since the last checked the figures in the last month. There are too many of these for me to watch before I die. It's impossible. But that's the problem with A/B testing. It's a long tail of absolute bollocks and some very good stuff at the front, right? So it's just a bit like YouTube. Some really good stuff, a small amount of okay stuff, and then a long tail of absolute, total, utter rubbish. And it's like we've given lightsabers out to people and said, here's some lightsabers, go play with them, right? And then we're surprised when this stuff happens, right? So you're giving these advanced A/B testing tools and throwing them into the hands of people who are not ready for it. And they'll be chopping off limbs effectively in your company. So here's your 10-point checklist that I'm going to cover today that will solve this problem of stupid testing. First thing is, your analytics is broken. You or your clients, your analytics is broken. You know, it's a fact. They all are. Almost every config I've looked at is broken horribly and badly. But the problem is that if you think, oh, we just install Google Analytics and it all kind of works, this is what you will get. You will get a collection system, a bit like a retail store, but it's going to be a Mickey Mouse one. It's going to be a toy. Google Analytics is free, but that's like saying, hey, I don't need to put oil in my car, do I? You know, if you do not invest in analytics and put the right amount of setup time in it, you know, just like not putting oil in your car, the whole thing will break down. And if you don't invest in it, then you end up with an analytics setup that's antiquated. It's not evolving, it's not iterating, it's not improving. So the analytics has to iterate with the product, right? The two things are coupled, making changes and measuring them. And out of all the sites that I've looked at in the last 3 years, almost all of them have been broken. So when people say to me there's nothing wrong with our stuff, I say to them, bullshit, we need to go and check. So this is like the tills in a retail store. If you don't collect the right stuff at the tills, lunch money, refunds, gift certificates, then what happens is this. You collect bullshit at the collection layer. Now imagine if John Lewis had the wrong stuff being collected in the tills, then all this bullshit flows upwards in your organization. So you've got bullshit collection. And then there's some bullshit metrics that take the bullshit collection, and then those bullshit metrics go into bullshit reports, which go into a nice pastel-colored bullshit executive dashboard. Right? And the flow of this stuff is like a sewage pipe coming all the way up in your organization from the collection layer, from the tills. Now, if retailers can grasp that, you guys need to too. So get a health check and figure out where analytics isn't working. Second tip is, you're testing in the wrong place. For me, it's like a plumbing problem. I'm trying to find out where the flow of delight and money is temporarily or totally choked in the product. And it, you know, I kind of visualize these flows in sites kind of almost like this when I'm thinking about it. But there's a million places I can test, but there's only going to be a couple that actually work. And this is what normally happens. Yeah, let's test the home page. Yeah, I want to test that page. Me personally, I hate the product page. So there's all this ego, rampant ego-driven crap in testing that's also there in design. I mean, you didn't think that you were going to get rid of that when you started A/B testing. Seriously? But the problem with this is you're wasting time testing in places that are not going to give you payback earlier on. You haven't prioritized this stuff. A second problem is people copy competitors. Oh, look what they're doing. We need to copy that. It's really stupid. Right? If you copy somebody else's site or A/B test, you could be copying all the stupid things they're doing. You just can't discriminate. And the problem is that there isn't best practice testing. You can't say, oh, I saw this test on that site, that will work on our customers, because the customers, the marketing, the traffic, their emotional state, they're all completely different. You know, if you think you can just take a test that you've seen at a visual layer without any of the data and insight and just replicate it on your site and hope that it will work. So these are nice patterns, but you haven't proved it yet, okay? Show me the proof. So you need to do things like this kind of modeling to figure out where to test. This one example here is from a site that does eye tests and hearing, right? So these guys are a large retailer, and basically if you look at all the traffic into their site, and you do a little bit of figuring out, nearly 70% is people who want to go to the stores. I want to see the store, I want to walk there, I want to get directions, I want to get the map, I want to call them, okay? And then the rest of the site is basically eye stuff and hearing stuff. So you can then look at these intent groups of people and then model how many of them go through the funnel. So you've got a smarter way. You're not looking at overall conversion rate, you're looking at conversion rate of committed people who have the potential to enter that funnel. It's a different ballgame. And if you have a B2B site that maybe has lots of lead gen or a non-e-commerce site, then you can have a model like this that has a number of intent groups or series of influence pages grouped together that are shoving traffic into those funnels. So do this kind of modeling and do step drop diagrams. These are great. They're in Google Analytics. If you switch them on, you can see how many people do a search, get to a category page, get to a product page, and so on. So you create a funnel diagram all the way to the edge of your site, not just inside the funnel itself. This is called a horizontal funnel. Check them out. It's enhanced e-commerce in Google Analytics. So do your research and analytics before you decide where to test. Don't go off half-cocked. A lot of people think, oh, responsive solves everything, you know, and it but it really screws up A/B testing in some strange and curious ways, because it's not really a bolt-on. You have to think about how you're actually testing. Here's a classic example. It's a desktop site, right? And it's got these, please stop putting inline field labels inside forms, right? Stop putting them in there. It's really dumb. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in usability tests. It doesn't work in conversion. Stop doing it. It looks nice, but it's bad for users. But in this case, if I was running an A/B test against this, you know, I'm thinking that's the design, but that isn't the design. That's the design. It's two different layouts that break on different devices. So if you're going to be testing on a responsive site, you need to know what the design breakpoints look like, because otherwise you don't have a clue about what the A/B test will look like. Either that, or you have to target one A/B test to those devices or that breakpoint, and one A/B test to those devices. But you have to figure this stuff out. Here's another example. Got a nice form like this on mobile, but on desktop, wow, it's like super, super wide fields. I mean, I've never seen, you know, I've got plenty of space to put my questions and comments in there. This is a general problem with responsive design. Looks great on mobile, shite on everything else, right? Okay, yeah, we're mobile first, we're mobile only, right? Because you get stuff like this. Great, we'll put the search box at the top of the screen and span it so on my 1920 by 1080 monitor, it freaking disappears. So nobody can see the search box anymore. Indeed, hardly anyone used it on desktop here. And then this kind of stuff on responsive, I just had to call this out. Does anyone know what these are? Right? Can anyone tell me exactly what these are? No, nobody else fucking knows either, right? Okay, so stop doing it. The second one, some of you should have guessed because it's a Microsoft Word icon. But stop putting mystery meats like this on websites. Look, Wroblewski has talked about this. It's like, chuck it in the hamburger. It's lazy thinking. Oh, we've got these menus. Chuck them in the hamburger, right? But what if people, if your audience isn't hip 20-somethings who know what a hamburger is, then they're not going to know that that's a menu, are they? They just see some lines, right? And if you add the word menu, here's an A/B test with all the data. You add the word menu, people get it. They use the menu. They then buy stuff. Amazing. Affordance. It's an important thing, right? Use it. And that's what this stuff is. I've worked out. Those are all the different types of kebabs that are available on your website. There's also one with a little grid of 6 or 9. That's a bento box, right? Those are great. Everybody thinks, oh, I've heard these things, all our customers use iPhones. It's just bullshit. We've got a huge amount of devices out there, and you need to work out what your device mix is and know it really intimately if you're going to be running A/B tests against them. It's really important. All this data is available on Google Analytics. And there are 3 reports down here at the bottom. The deck is downloadable, so grab it later. But here's an example on iPhone. You can go into Google Analytics, and it will tell you all the device models of iPhone. So you can work out why your website doesn't convert well on iPhone 4s, because the button is cut off or the menu doesn't work. So there's this data there. This is really useful data when you're designing products, so go and mine it. Right? But figure out what your device mix is really. Don't make assumptions or say it's all iPhones, because it's not true. If you don't do any research before you actually go off A/B testing, you're missing a big trick, because this is what drives the quality of tests. And we asked people why they weren't doing this, and they're saying time and budget, and oh God, a load of really kind of lame excuses for not doing this stuff, and people think it takes a long time, but it's not. It's really difficult to solve a problem that you don't understand. If you're looking at a landing page, how are you going to solve it if you don't actually have a problem domain to consider as part of it? And this is the thing. I think this page needs something, and people just pull this stuff out of their heads. We need evidence. We don't need crystal ball when it comes to the design of the site. We need these things. We need to know where they came from, what they had in their hands, what they did before, what they did after, where they dropped out. All this information, again, is available in Google Analytics. There is a complete plan here for 1 hour of research you can do on a landing page, on your site or client, before you do a test on it. 1 hour is all you need. And it describes and articulates these kind of things. How many tablets drop out at this level? How many mobiles make it through? How does that stuff compare to that? So there's no excuse. If you've got the luxury of 2 hours, you can do all this stuff as well. And if you have 4 hours, you can really get into some serious stuff. So even with half a day of work, there's a complete article explaining all of this stuff. You can download all the Google Analytics reports. But if you do this stuff before you actually build your test, then you'll be building tests based on real reasons, observations and data, real stuff you've collected, and it will push out the ego and opinion. So do your research. It's lean analytics, right? It's really rapid, lightweight research. You can pull data and chuck it into the design meeting. Very important. And if you don't prioritize your tests, right? If you've got 100 places you want to test, you need to say which ones are going to be worth doing. And that's the stuff that's easy to build, but also likely to drive lots of money or an increase in customer delight. So if you score things on opportunity versus cost, then all you need to do is start working this stuff up in the top right-hand quadrant, because this is the cheapest stuff that will shift this metric most. And so we start there. And lots of people just go and randomly pick stuff from here. Start here, and you will make more money earlier in the testing cycle. And if you look at all your tests and quantify what a 2, 5, and 10% lift in your metric would get you, you can even put a money figure here against it and say, this is how much money we think this test is going to make. And that's another way of dealing with the priority. But if you don't have prioritization, then you will be doing random testing. That's the problem. So prioritize the targets. Another problem is that most people launch their A/B tests and they haven't tested them on the devices it's going to be shown to. So it's broken on a tablet, or it's broken on Internet Explorer, or it doesn't work on Android handsets. How do you know? No one's going to call you up and tell you. It does not happen. Okay? No one's going to report that they've got a broken A/B test on your site. So you need to test with this shizzle. Right? I've found lots and lots of money with this stuff. This is my testing rig. I use this to test all the browsers, all the devices, all the tablets, all the mobiles, and the picture behind is actually a rack with mobile phones that you can connect to over the cloud and remote control them. So if you don't have an iPhone 5 or 4 hanging around the office, then you can rent one for there and run some tests on it. You can go to a phone in Brazil, rent it, go to the Brazilian app store, install an app, and do everything like you were there with it in your hand. So again, there's no excuse. There are even open device labs in London and other cities where you can take your shizzle and test it there, because it's got loads of stuff. There's a whole article explaining this. Please read it. So, do your pre-flight checks. This is the biggest problem that hits people, the 95% confidence thing. 40 people I heard recently asked them all when they would stop a test, and they said when they hit 95% confidence. It's wrong, okay? It's not going to tell you. What happens is a lot of tests get to 95% confidence before they're ready. It's a false declaration. It's leading you to believe the test is finished, and there's an article in Nature that explains why this bit of statistics has been debunked. So you've got to be careful about this stuff. And here's the problem. You know, if I'm running a test on fluffy kittens versus cute puppy dogs on my clickbait site, then you know, after 200 tests, you know, I think the fluffy kitten here, number 3, you know, is significant as a test result. But if I'd let it run for as long as I was actually planning to, we would see in the end that there's a 50% error rate. You know, I've made a bad business call. So I've gone around and told everyone, gangbusters on fluffy kittens, fluffy kitten landing pages, fluffy kittens on the home, fluffy kittens everywhere. Yet it was the cute puppy dogs that won. But because people imbue A/B testing with some sort of amazing statistical validity that might not actually be there, you've told your whole company to bet its future on the wrong call. It's like coin flipping with your business. It's really dumb. So don't self-stop. There's the guidelines for how long to run your test for. That is a nice little safety net. It's not perfect. It's got some rough edges, but use that as a baseline. You know, that's the kind of thing. This is how long you want to run a test for. Never run it for a week. Always run it at least a couple of weeks. So anyway, there's a test length calculator there that will let you work out how long it's going to run. You plug it in, you run the test for the time you specified, and you stop it. Don't wait for it to go your way. If B does not win, letting it run a month longer is not going to magically make B start winning. Believe me, I've tried it. I have waited a long time. So understand how long to test for, because that's really going to hit things. And you need a solid hypothesis. Most of these, this is what goes into most product design these days. It's just all bullshit. And it will fill that vacuum. You know, if we don't have user research or data, then this is the stuff that tends to fill that vacuum. And this is the real stuff that we want to go in place of that. And this data and research, whether it's analytics data or your user research, will actually drive the quality of the hypothesis engine in your company. So print this out, and anyone wants to run an A/B test on your site or your client site, and you say, we will run it if you can fit it into this sentence, okay? And most people will break down at the first one. I would like to change an orange button because I just felt like it. It's not going to work. So I use this to deflect stupid testing. Fill this in, and if I'm not laughing by the end of it, then you might be in with a chance. Because we saw an angry email from the CEO, we expect that changing button colors will cause the office to cool down for a day, right? And we'll measure this using some bullshit metric that we pluck out of the air. That's what normally happens. So use the hypothesis kit and get that properly going. This is a big problem. Running random tests and running tests in the wrong places, it's not actually teaching you anything. Changing the color of a button doesn't teach you anything. It might teach you that the prominence of the button plays a factor in the conversion. But actually, you're really interested in lots of tests that tell you, that's really interesting, that tells us something that we can use in our PPC advertising. That tells us something we can use over there. So the testing isn't about lifts, it's actually about the learning that you get. And this is a great quote. This is what it is for me. It's just extra information that I'm running tests to teach me things that I can replay. They go into my playbook. So try and design tests for maximum learning, and you've got to think what will happen in terms of the outcome there before you actually run the test. And if you don't know what action you're going to take based on A or B winning, then you haven't really thought it through, have you? Number 10, this is the most important thing. If you think that you can go to a siloized organization that passes the product around like a screaming baby or hurls it around like a screaming baby, and they're all working in different silos and they don't talk to each other, and you think you're going to take A/B testing and layer over the top of that kind of bullshit and expect it to work, it will not. So non-agile, non-iterative design, it just doesn't work with A/B testing. I'm seeing a big theme develop here. Organizations are getting fed up of wasting 40, 50, 60% of their development time having innumerable business analysts and project managers who don't seem to glue anything together. They just gum things up or stretch them out for longer. Too many meetings, too unwieldy kind of systems for coordinating this stuff, you know. And the endless suck of sign-off, 3 weeks to sign this one piece of text. Oh, it's just... So if you have that in place, then your A/B testing will suffer from exactly the same problems. It's the same transport underneath. Financial Times example, small team, 6 to 15 people. They can set and get analytics metrics. They have autonomy to publish, and they publish several hundred times a day. The stakeholder teams have no idea what these guys are actually going to build. They just say, we want you to increase subscriptions by 15%, and we'll leave it to you to do it. They can't even come to the meetings where the team are discussing all this stuff. So the business just defines an outcome. The team has to execute a number of strategies around that outcome. But what happened before was every project at the FT took at least 18 months. It was out of date. Nobody wanted it at the end. And it cost much more and took far longer than they expected. And after they did this stuff, nothing was late. It was all under budget. It was all launched earlier than it was expected. And they all got really good feedback from customers. So go figure, you know. FT, ING, a lot of companies I've been talking to recently are getting this, finally. I hope everybody does. And, you know, they're launching alphas and betas and pilots and increasing the fidelity level of their systems. So they're prototyping live on their website. They're not prototyping in the lab. They're prototyping live against millions of customers and using the live traffic to actually iterate this stuff in a quantitatively sound way that will be better than iterating it in a lab. You know, from some points of view, we can argue about that one afterwards. The answer is do both. So positive attributes, where I'm seeing A/B testing really working, are these kind of things. If these are there, the more of these legs a company has, the more solid it is a bar stool. If you have 1 or 2 legs, you're going to keep falling on your ass, right? 3, 4, or 5, it's just even more solid. And all this stuff, I call this, it's all the same shit diagram, right? Because, you know, I get people saying to me, well, we're going for a data-driven iterative UX thing. Well, isn't that kind of just like lean testing? Or isn't that a bit like analytics with a bit of, you know, qualitative data in there? Yeah, it's all the same stuff. So I see people who say, oh, we're getting really good. And I look at them and I think, actually, you guys are lighting up all this stuff on here. So although we approach it from different disciplines, a lot of this stuff is essentially the same. And we're trying to solve the same problems. So don't think of these differently. They end up in the same place when you get that advanced. So burn down the silos. And really, when it comes to the next part of A/B testing, which is innovation, if you get those sort of basic ground rules in, then you can start innovating around the interesting things that are happening at the edge of your product futures. And I like to think of this as, you know, I call this my shit creek diagram, right? And these are all the dendritic outcomes that your business can potentially have based on the choices that you make. How can I make sure that my team aren't going down these shit creeks at the bottom? How can I make sure that we choose some positive outcomes? There's lots of bad future decisions in here and some good ones. How do I work out what the best path is for my company to take? And it's called Rumsfeldian space. You need to explore it and get out there, right? It's the unknown unknowns. So it's like, what if we changed our product? What if we put the price down? What if we had 5 packages rather than 3? A/B testing can answer these questions. You can actually run some tests that will figure out what your business future is going to be like. McDonald's is a great example. They've got a burger store where they test new recipes. It's not called McDonald's. Looks like some cool hipster burger store, right? But they pre-test menus in there, and then they decide whether they're going to roll them out nationally. Your website is your hipster test store. So use that to transform the business. It's your pilot. Here's a perfect example from the student room of this sort of testing. These guys were offering too much in their free package. Look at all these ticks here, giving away too much, being far too generous. How can we adjust this to give the maximum amount of revenue here, but also get loads of people to sign up for free? Why don't we take the ticks away? And the developer said, that'll take months to code. It's really complicated. And I said, we just do a Wizard of Oz test. There's nothing behind the curtain. We'll show people different numbers of X's and measure their propensity to sign up for the free package or the paid package. So we were able to model the future of the business before we did the coding to support that future model? And the answer here in this case was, by removing a couple of the X's, we increased the paid sign-ups by 185%. It's an annual subscription. This company doubled their cash flow after running this test. That's not a bad A/B test to run. But they were able to predict the best future for their business before writing a single line of code. Very important. And that's what we said at the end to the people who we said weren't going to get some features. We just said, congratulations, we're giving you some free stuff that you weren't expecting. They were delighted. It was all a lie, but it was meant to answer a fundamental business question. So if this is the kind of thing that's happening on A/B testing, then you need to work out how you're going to solve the ego problem. And that's what I thought I knew back when I started testing. And this is actually what I now know. I know the true extent and boundary of my knowledge, and I know what I can predict and what I can't predict. And A/B testing has taught me that. It destroyed my ego. And essentially, a lot of you are winging it. It's easy to see problems in a usability test. It's easy to observe things going wrong. Don't fall into the arrogant trap of thinking because you can spot them that you know precisely the solution that will solve that problem. That's where testing and validation comes in. You have to admit, we're kind of winging it a little bit, right? Just be truthful with yourself. And part of that is the first step in going to Guessaholics Anonymous, because that is the first step in getting out. You know, you've got to admit you've got a problem. You're spending a lot of your time guessing. So do it in a data-driven way. Remember to get out of the stupid testing curve. And if you have any questions or you want to catch me afterwards, please drop me a line. You can download the slide deck here. Thank you very much for your time today.